Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to sift through the technical data, the expert reviews, all the numbers really, and pull out what you need to know. And today, we are strapping in for a pretty high voltage look at the, radically updated 2025 Audi e-tron-gt family. We're going to focus mainly on that new top dog, the RS e-tron-gt Performance. Our goal here is to really dissect the huge engineering changes Audi's brought in, motors, battery, the works, and figure out if this refresh truly lets them play at the very top level. We're talking challenging its own sibling, the Porsche Taycan, and of course the benchmark, the Tesla Model S.
Yeah, and look, this isn't just a minor tweak. It feels like a statement from Audi. They're actually calling the RS e-tron-gt Performance their most powerful and quickest production car.
Yeah.
Ever. That's a big claim. So yeah, we absolutely need to unpack the engineering, the strategy behind it, and see if they can actually shake up that performance hierarchy that's been pretty established.
Okay, let's dive right into the power then. The headline number is, get this, 912 horsepower from the new RS e-tron-gt Performance when you use launch control. I mean, that's a jump of 275 horsepower over the old model. It's massive. The immediate question is this real innovation, or are they just, turning up the dial on the shared VW Group parts bin?
Well, it's probably a bit of both, but strategically done. The total peak electric output is actually 680 kilowatts. That's 925 PS if you use metric horsepower. And that 912 horsepower figure, it slots the Audi very deliberately, I think, right between the 871 horsepower Taycan Turbo and the 938 horsepower Taycan Turbo S. That's not an accident, right? That's positioning. Audi stepping up, carving out its own hyper-performance spot, just maybe a hair below that absolute top-tier Turbo S.
And the performance figures that come from that power, they are just, staggering. Tests clocked at 0 to 60 mile per hour in just 2.1 seconds. Blindingly fast, the quarter mile, gone in 9.8 seconds, 138 mile per hour. We are seriously talking acceleration that belonged to million-dollar hypercars only a few years back.
Exactly. And the how is really important here. They've got a new permanent magnet synchronous motor on the rear axle. It's physically smaller, about 22 pounds lighter, but puts out 556 horsepower. That's a huge bump. And crucially, they kept that key piece of tech, the two-speed transmission on the rear axle.
Right, the two-speed. What's the real benefit of keeping that when, a lot of competitors just use a single gear?
Well, think of it like a torque multiplier. That first gear is purely for launch, for getting off the line instantly. It lets the motors spin in their most efficient range for maximum initial punch. That's how you get that brutal 2.1 second time. Then second gear takes over for, more efficient highway cruising. It's a mechanical advantage. And that's why the RS, tested against the heavier Taycan Turbo Cross Turismo, was clearly quicker. About 0.4 seconds faster to 60 and in the quarter mile.
And they've added this tactical feature too, the push-to-pass button. It's specific to the RS right on the steering wheel.
Yep. You press it and bang an extra 94 horsepower for 10 seconds. That's on top of its already potent standard mode. It's basically, like you said, a free pass for overtakes.
So comparing it again, the old Tesla Model S Plaid Plus was chasing sub-2-second times, but maybe wasn't always consistent. This Audi seems to deliver that Porsche-level speed, proven speed, maybe for a bit less cash than the equivalent Taycan.
That seems to be the initial take, yes. Consistent, repeatable performance that's right there with the Taycan, potentially offering a bit more value depending on the exact configurations you compare.
Okay, so the acceleration is pretty much hypercar territory. Settled. But the big question for anyone actually living with an EV is endurance, right? How far does this new bigger battery really go? And crucially, how fast can you juice it back up? We need to talk range and charging.
Absolutely critical, and Audi clearly put a lot of effort here. The net battery capacity is up from 84 kilowatt hours to 97, but what's really impressive, I think, is the energy density. They managed to increase the capacity and reduce the battery's overall weight by about 9 kilograms. More energy, less mass. That's smart engineering.
And does that translate to real-world range? What are the numbers?
It does. The official EPA estimate for the RS is 278 miles. But here's the key finding for you listening. In the independent 75 mile per hour highway range test, the RS actually went 280 miles. It beat its own EPA estimate. That's always good to see.
Okay, exceeding the estimate is definitely a plus. Now, charging, that's the other half of the equation.
Right, and this is another big leap. The max DC fast charge rate is now 320 kilowatts. That's a 50 kilowatt increase. This is where that 800-volt system plus better cooling and cell tech really shines. It can just gulp down power at a higher rate for longer.
So less time tethered to a charger. How fast are we talking in practical terms, like a typical highway stop?
Well, under ideal conditions, Audi claims 10 to 80% charge in just 18 minutes.
18 minutes. That's fast.
It is. And maybe more relatable, they say you can add about 174 miles of range in only 10 minutes. The reason it's so quick is that sustained rate. It holds over 200 kilowatts up to nearly 60% charge and stays well above 100 kilowatts, even up to 80%. It doesn't drop off a cliff like some others. That charging curve is key.
And they improve the energy recovery too, right? The regen braking.
Massively. It jumped from 290 kilowatts up to 400 kilowatts. That's a huge capacity for recapturing energy when you slow down, which makes a real difference in everyday driving efficiency, particularly in stop-and-go traffic.
Okay, so we've got incredible power, really fast charging. Now, how do they make sure this car, which, let's face it, is still pretty heavy at over 5,100 pounds, can actually handle all that performance? Let's get into the dynamics, the suspension.
Right, controlling the power. It starts with aero, actually. The design is very sleek, achieving a low drag coefficient down around 0.24 to 0.26. You've got active elements too, like cooling inlets that open and close, and a rear spoiler that adjusts itself based on speed.
But the suspension is where the big changes are, mechanically. The standard air suspension is different now.
Yeah, the standard setup moves from an older 3-chamber single-valve system to a new 2-chamber, 2-valve design.
Okay, what does that mean for the driver? 2-chamber, 2-valve.
Basically, it means they can control the compression stroke when the wheel hits a bump and the rebound stroke when it extends back down independently.
Yeah.
Before, they were kind of linked. So now, the car can be softer and more compliant for comfort when you're just cruising, but instantly firm up both directions for really flat, precise control when you're cornering hard. It's about broadening that range between luxury ride and sharp handling.
And then there's the really fancy option, active ride. This sounds like some kind of physics-defying tech. No more anti-roll bars.
That's right. This system ditches the traditional mechanical anti-roll bars entirely. Instead, it uses individual hydraulic pumps at each corner of the car.
Wow, what does that do?
It's pretty amazing, actually. The system actively counteracts body movements. So when you brake hard, it fights the nosedive. When you accelerate, it fights the squat. When you turn, it keeps the car almost perfectly level, minimizing body roll. This means incredibly precise steering feel and maximizes the tire grip because the car stays so flat. It also smooths out vibrations on normal roads, and it can even tilt the car slightly into corners or lift the whole car up when you park to make getting in and out easier.
That sounds technically brilliant, but replacing solid metal bars with complex hydraulics and software, doesn't that raise questions about long-term reliability, especially if we're going to talk about software glitches later?
That is absolutely the million-dollar question, isn't it? You're trading proven mechanical simplicity for cutting-edge, active control. The performance benefit is clear, but yes, it puts a huge emphasis on the durability of those hydraulic components, and the software running them makes that warranty pretty important.
And speaking of bringing this beast to a stop, brakes.
Standard brakes are tungsten-coated iron rotors, which are already pretty high performance. But you can option up to full carbon ceramic discs with the Dynamic Plus package. Stopping power is strong. Tests show 70 down to Vilcrow in about 147 feet. Very solid for a car this heavy.
Okay, active ride, carbon ceramics. This all sounds expensive, which brings us neatly to the cost. Let's talk about the financial reality of owning one of these. The RS e-tron-gt Performance starts at $168,295.
You're around there, yes. And as we always say, the sticker price is just the beginning. We looked at the 5-year true cost to own data, the TCO. This assumes you drive about 15,000 miles a year. For the RS e-tron-gt Performance, that estimated 5-year TCO comes out to $175,128.
Wow. So basically the cost of the car again over 5 years. And what's the biggest chunk of that?
Overwhelmingly, it's depreciation. The estimate is $95,800 lost in value over those 5 years. That's, more than half the total cost right there? These high-end EVs still depreciate heavily.
Okay, depreciation is the monster. What else adds up?
Well, financing is significant. Estimated at around $27,500 in interest, assuming a typical loan. Taxes and fees add up to nearly $19,000. Electricity, your fuel, is estimated around $10,000 over 5 years, which is obviously much less than gas for a similar performance car. Insurance is about $11,000.
And what about maintenance versus repairs? That's always interesting with EVs.
Yeah, look at this. The projected maintenance cost is actually quite high, around $9,100 over 5 years. But projected repair costs are relatively low, maybe $2,700. That high maintenance figure, that's mostly tires. Putting nearly 1,000 horsepower through rubber means you'll be replacing tires fairly often. It's not things breaking, it's the cost of using the performance.
So wrapping up the cost perspective,
Yeah.
you get performance that rivals, sometimes beats, a comparable Porsche Taycan, potentially for less initial outlay, and you get that perhaps more familiar Audi interior feel, more buttons, less screen reliance to the Taycan. That could honestly be the deciding factor for some people, right? The daily usability.
Absolutely. The interior philosophy is quite different between the two, even though they share a platform. That tactile difference matters to a lot of buyers.
Now, we need to put on our consumer advocate hat for a moment. The performance is stellar, the tech is advanced, but we should also touch on some real-world reported issues, particularly from the platform's earlier iterations, though hopefully improved now.
Yes, it's important to be realistic. No complex car is perfect. Based on owner reports, issues seem to fall into a few main areas. Firstly, software and infotainment glitches, things like the system freezing, lagging, maybe in navigation errors or problems connecting phones. Pretty common in modern cars, unfortunately.
Yay, software gremlins. What else?
Second, some reports around the battery and charging, things like maybe not achieving the maximum charge speeds consistently. Some reports of gradual range loss over time, or occasional faults with the charging port itself.
And mechanicals,
Yeah.
drivetrain or suspension.
Yeah, there have been some mentions that on the drivetrain side, maybe reports of slightly reduced acceleration compared to new, or some unusual noises from the motors. And for suspension and brakes, things like premature wear on suspension components, maybe shock absorber leaks, or needing brake pads sooner than expected, even with the strong regenerative braking doing a lot of the work.
Right, worth keeping in mind. But you mentioned the warranty earlier.
Correct. And it's pretty comprehensive. The powertrain itself is covered for 8 years or 100,000 miles. And the high-voltage battery has an even longer warranty, 10 years or 150,000 miles. That does provide a good safety net for those major components.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together for you, the listener. The 2025 Audi RS e-tron-gt performance. It's undeniably a technical showcase. It delivers truly elite, almost unbelievable electric acceleration. And it backs that up with significant, much-needed improvements in charging speed and real-world range. Audi's clearly positioned this as a powerful, very high-tech, and maybe crucially, a slightly more value-conscious choice compared to its direct Porsche rival in that top-end EV space.
I agree. It's a phenomenal piece of engineering. I mean, just think about it, a luxury sedan, still weighing over 5,000 pounds, hitting 60 miles an hour in 2.1 seconds. They've pushed the performance envelope while also improving efficiency and cutting some weight. It really does raise a fascinating question, though, about where this all goes next. We've kind of reached peak acceleration, haven't we? At least peak usable acceleration on the road. So the question I'm left with is, how much lighter and faster can these luxury GTs realistically get before the main engineering challenge isn't just making them faster, but figuring out how drivers can actually, legally, and safely use that kind of performance potential day to day? Where does the focus shift now?